En esta oportunidad tenemos un invitado muy interesante, Panagiotis Pamidis, es profesor asociado en el Laboratorio de Física Médica de la Facultad de Medicina de la Universidad Aristóteles en Grecia. Él es un fundador y líder de 4 importantes grupos de investigación: informática para la educación médica, tecnología de asistencia y ciencia plateada, neurociencia aplicada y afectiva, investigación en servicios de salud. En los últimos 6 años ha sido coordinador de 5 grandes proyectos europeos. En la página web pueden tener un link a esos proyectos: Smoke Free, Medicator, Long Lasting Memories, EPPLNet, Children's Health, así como investigador principal en numerosos proyectos nacionales e internacionales. Es autor de numerosas publicaciones en journal, conferencias, capítulos de libros, revisor y editor invitado en más de 17 revistas. Es presidente de la Sociedad Helénica de Tecnología Biomédica y miembro de numerosos consejos en temas de Alzheimer, aeroespacial, ciencias de la vida e innovación. Ha sido además chairman y organizador de 7 conferencias internacionales y numerosas nacionales en tecnología biomédica. Es investigador visitante en el Instituto Karolinska en Suecia, ganador de premios por trayectoria, profesor honorario de la Universidad Médica de Kazajstán y obtuvo la medalla Post-Fellow por su contribución al desarrollo de la educación médica en esa universidad. Sus principales líneas de investigación son el aprendizaje aumentado con tecnologías para la educación médica, neurociencia efectiva y aplicada, computación fisiológica, interacción multimodal e interfaz hombre-computador, informática biomédica, análisis de señal y de emociones humanas. Y ha estado investigando de forma muy activa en su último tiempo en tecnologías de asistencia para una vejez activa y saludable. Y eso es lo que nos va a hablar hoy día. Este tema es de particular importancia en Chile porque tenemos el mismo problema de los países desarrollados, también tenemos problemas de países desarrollados, de que la población está envejeciendo y hay mucho menos jóvenes. ¿Ya? Entonces se espera que en el futuro próximo la cantidad de adultos mayores sea muy grande y van a hacer falta todas estas tecnologías de apoyo para ayudarles a vivir y pasar una mejor calidad de vida, ¿cierto? Entonces esta clase inaugural es sobre este tema y sobre cómo y qué pueden hacer los ingenieros biomédicos para ayudar a una vejez saludable y activa. Profesor.
Thank you, first of all, for the kind invitation. It's a pleasure to be here in the South Hemisphere, and it's a pleasure to be with you, for students of my good friend and colleague Esteban Pino. And thanks for the invitation again and the opportunity for me for being here. As my presentation says, I will talk about technology for the elderly people, or care technology. We'll define that. And the title looks a little bit provocative, challenging, in the sense that we try to get it out of the lab, out of the box, and do it in the normal daily living situations. So basically biomedical engineering in practice, in daily practice. And I'll try to show you how this daily practice is applied when it comes to old people, elderly people that have got lots of needs, as we see. So before we start, let's show a few things, where we come from and why we are here, etc. So basically, it took long. This is where I came from, Thessaloniki, which is in Greece, in the north part of Greece. It's a sub-capital like Concepcion. And it took longer than 1 day because there are stopovers, like in Madrid and then in Santiago, etc. So it took longer than a day. But I think it's worthwhile. In Greek we have a poet that says, it doesn't matter if you arrive somewhere, if you reach the destination. The important thing is the journey. Okay? So the longer the trip, the better the experience. That's why I mark it in that way. So what is the common between Chile and Greece apart from football connections last year in the World Cup or something? This is where Greece is in Europe, and you will notice that there's a lot of islands around here. You can only see the big islands actually. And Chile is of course a long country, 8,000 kilometers long. But if you look at Wikipedia, the list of countries with the very long coastline around the islands and around the beaches, we are better than Chile. Okay, Chile is here, although we are smaller and much, condensed. Why is that? Because we have a very long coastline because of the islands. We have so many islands covered, and none of the beaches that we have is only a small part of the whole beach is just a straight line beach. Everything else is just curves, and the landscape is so complicated. That's why it's basically very sort of high in terms of coastline. But I think mentalities of people are closer than the similarities of the coastline. Anyhow, if we look in Greece, this is where Thessaloniki is in the north place, here actually. And this is some pictures from Thessaloniki. It's a nice seafront. This is the emblem of Thessaloniki, the White Tower, back into the Byzantine and Roman times. This is from the whole city view from the airport. The port is a natural port of Alexander the Great from history. And as I say in my presentation here in Titan, this is what I see from my office actually. And this is Mount Olympus, where the gods of ancient Greece lived, supposedly. Okay, so when there's a good weather, this is what I enjoy from my office. Not exactly this, but something like that. Okay. Now into the medical school, we have a lab, long living lab, which is called the Lab of Medical Physics. And this is where I am in the last 3-4 years, basically, when I moved into this from the medical informatics lab that I was before. And in this lab, we have many research groups. Most of these I had sort of established them. Some of others exist before. So much of the work that I will be showing you is of groups like assistive technologies and silver science for the elderly, silver, biomedical electronics and devices, health services research, applied and effective neuroscience, and medical imaging and stuff like that. So it's a very sort of productive lab. There are about 20 postgraduate students and associates working there with 2 members of staff, myself and my colleague. And as you will see, we have a wide span of activities. We also have a biomedical engineering society, which I serve as the president. And this is also a member of organizations like the International Federation of Medical and Biological Engineering Societies, or the European Alliance of Medical and Biological Engineering Societies, etc. These are bodies. And since last year, I'm the president of this society. We also do conferences every now and then, international conferences, as well as national conferences. So before we begin, let me share with you, I don't know if you can still hear me. I'll share with you a video so that we can put the challenges across, basically.
What was the major medical breakthrough in modern history? Was it anesthesia, antibiotics, or vaccination? Was it the wonders of medical imaging, from x-rays and ultrasounds to CAT scans? Or pacemakers, coronary angioplasty, heart transplants, or genetic engineering? Could it have been drugs like Prozac, statins, or even Viagra? No, it was the discovery and dissemination of basic public health, such as sanitation, hand washing, refrigeration, and indoor living and working environments. Before the 1850s, we didn't understand its importance in warding off communicable diseases, and people died as a result, often in thousands and almost always at very young ages. Public health fundamentally changed what it means to be human. Along with modern medical breakthroughs, it was simple things like clean water and sanitation that helped humans dramatically change the conditions under which we live, enabling us to experience much longer lives and, for the first time with great regularity, the biological aging of our bodies. We succeeded in adding 30 years on average to the lives of individuals in many parts of the world over the last century. A dramatic achievement to be sure, but the real question is, where does this leave us now? Is there a price we have to pay for the privilege of living longer? The answer is a definitive yes. While communicable diseases once killed us at a young age, today many more people live long enough for the privilege of experiencing chronic degenerative diseases associated with old age. Fragile bones, muscle atrophy, cancer, heart disease, sensory impairments, all signs that the human body was not designed for long-term use. In fact, we may have already reached, or in a way actually exceeded, the biological limitations of our bodies. When people reach older ages with both mind and body intact, it's a wondrous thing to behold. But where one or the other doesn't make it, the result can be devastating, a prolongation of old age, the very thing many of us fear most. Under these conditions, longer lives can be emotionally and financially challenging for the dying as well as family and friends. But aging and old age need not be thought of only as a time of loss and decline. For increasingly larger segments of society, healthy and productive aging is normal, representing a unique opportunity that few people throughout history had an opportunity to experience. A healthy older life can and should be nurtured. Today, a new medical breakthrough stands before us that may be as important as public health a century ago. I believe science is on the verge of discovering a longevity dividend, the health and economic benefits that would accrue to individuals and societies resulting from a successful effort to slow biological aging. Science is not there yet, but if we find a way to extend the period of youthful vigor, even by just a few years, the trade-off of chronic diseases for 30 years of life that public health brought us in the last century will yield a new and more positive way of thinking about aging and the extended lives many of us enjoy.
That sets the pace. Can technology make us live longer? Even 3 years would be enough. If we have technology that can power our grandfathers to live even 3 years longer with good quality of life, it will be very good. So this is a video that we just saw my other good friend and colleague from the biomedical engineering lab in the engineering faculty showed 2 weeks ago in a workshop that I organized in Thessaloniki. And I'll show you his project later on, something on Parkinson's disease that we just started now with type 5. Anyhow, let's go into the essence of this presentation. Technology about the gerontology, the elderly people, as it's a Greek word, both words in fact, Greek technology and gerontology. And it's an interdisciplinary academic field now, professional field that combines gerontology, the science for the elderly people, and technology. This involves a lot of things and depends on a number of other fields, like creating technologies that assist people, assistive technologies, designs that include all people, they are for all people, inclusive design, and they are innovative, and they are, they emphasize on independent living, as I was showing you, people that can stay at home and live on their own without the support of other people, in good health and comfort and safety. And also concerns other technological environments, which you, like engineers, might meet at the end of your career, at the end of your studies, at the beginning of your career. Like health, we need clinicians, we need nurses, we need housing experts, we need communication experts, leisure, etc. Even tourism studies are needed here. And the outcomes can form the basis for engineers, builders, designers, manufacturers, etc. So a lot of health professions are involved in this domain. And that's why in my group, and if you see, I said about 20-25 people around every day. Some of them are computer scientists, some of them are engineers, sports experts, psychologists, cardiologists, neurologists, even we have literature and journalism people, electronics engineers, and you name it, we have it basically. It's a very multidisciplinary group. A lot of other sciences come together to build what I will show you. So aging. In the past, we used to live much less. 300 years ago, we only lived up to 35, so I would be dead, basically now, if I was born 300 years ago. And then you see how much we live increased rapidly, and by this decade, the previous decade, it reached of the order of 80. This is an immense, as the video also showed, achievement of the technology and the society and all the different researchers. We live longer, as I mentioned. And there is also, you might have seen sometime recently, you will get to see more and more in your lives, there is a difference in how we grow now. This is men and women, and this is the years. Babies here, old people here. Okay? And there's supposed to be quite a few people that are old, and too many young and middle-aged people. But now, rather than being like that, it's being like this shape. So it's all ages at the same time. So too many old people, by the way. The aging society, this is why it's called the aging society. We have more elderly now than we used to have in the past. Okay? Families. My father and my mother used to have big families. Okay? My mother were 8 children. So 2 old people were grandparents, and then 8 people. But now you understand that families are not like that, and there is basically a difference in how the society is built. There are more older people than before, therefore. Okay? This is the difference how the two shapes should have been, and they are at the moment. And also, our abilities decline. There are studies that emphasize that as soon as we grow older than 30 years old, you are okay, you are safe at the moment. But as soon as you cross the limit of 30 years, you start declining. How much intelligent you are, how much you can process, how much you can be flexible and have the flow of your mind easily, etc. So it starts a declination. This is natural, very natural. It happens all the time. It has been happening throughout the centuries if somebody lives longer. The problems start when this affecting the everyday life, like, oh, I forgot. And you don't remember that you forget. You keep forgetting without being aware of your forgetfulness. Okay? And you cannot do many things. You cannot walk out and do shopping, etc., as long as you grow older. So this is the declination curve, body and mind as well. So the challenge, this is a complex effect for the society and the healthcare. The more older people, the worse news for the healthcare. You have to go to the hospital, doctors get very busy with old people, they cannot do many things because old people suffer from a lot of diseases at the same time. Okay? And there is a low probability of these diseases being treated at the same time. So successful aging, as we call it, healthy aging, etc., consists of 3 components. Have low probability for the disease, be cognitive and physically functionable, have good mind and good body, basically, to do things, and have an active engagement in your life. And this is what we had as a challenge back in 2008, we were asking ourselves, can technology help? Can we do things that we do in other situations like games, computer games for instance, or technologies that can assist people, that can assist old people to do things like this, stay away from disease, be better in mind, better in body. And the market at that time and still lacks products and services that have proved value basically, and they have measured effects. And I'll end up with this and showing you that there is also a business capacity beyond what is shown by research. So cognitive decline is responsible for much of the quality of life deterioration for senior people, old people. They have also bad mood, and that's why a lot of them suffer from geriatric depression. They don't have anything in particular, but they don't feel happy. They cannot laugh. They cannot enjoy themselves. Because, it's not because. This is the way it is. Can we do something for them? At the moment, I'll show you that we can start diagnosing this as early as we can, so that we can intervene. And the bad news also is that there is no drug, there is no pharmaceutical intervention that can treat this decline, Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and stuff like that. You cannot just get a pill and start remembering and forget your forgetfulness. Okay? You cannot do anything like that. And therefore there is this non-pharmacological weapons that we have. It's called physical exercise and cognitive exercise. All Greek people used to say, a good mind should exist in a good body. Good health for your mind or your brain means that you must have good health for your body as well. And this is where we started our challenging program back in 2008. We said, okay, let's build programs that can do physical improvement and cognitive improvement with technology and be with low prices so that all people can use it. Okay? So it doesn't matter if it goes to America, USA, or a low medium income country like exists in the post-Soviet or whatever, or in Africa. As soon as we have it, they must be able to use it. And there was some publications already that show that if you do training, physical training and cognitive training, I'll show you what it is, then your mind gets regenerated. There is what is called neuroplasticity. Our mind, our brains are like plastic. Imagine you have a plastic bag and you try to put it in your pocket. If you take it out, it will just reshape. This is how our brains are. If you do proper training, they will start reshaping. And they will change the situation they used to be. Therefore, if we train properly, we might slow down or even invert this decline. And this was noticed by some Americans back in 2009 when we started this. So we used them. We have a collaboration since then with them trying to do things. So this is the question we ask. Can technology intervene? Can we make the internet developments fight this decline, promote active aging? Can elderly people improve their health by playing games over the internet? Are there such games for grown-up kids? There were no games at that time, back in 2008. So we built some. And you will see some of them in a video in a minute or so. Okay, so these are our research questions, so our challenges basically. And we had a project at those days which was called LLM, Long-Lasting Memories, which we tried to integrate different products, improve cognitive health, boost physical health, and all this within a living environment that would prevent also falls, etc. The combination of all these did not exist, and we tried to do it in hundreds of people, 1,000 people in various European countries at that time. So this is some of the exercise. This is a product, now the American product for cognitive training. It's called Brain HQ, Brain Headquarters it's called. Okay, people around the world are using it. This is the translation in the Greek that we have done. The company is called Posit Science, and You just log in, you make an account, you pay for it, of course, and then you start doing attention exercises, speed exercises, memory exercises, other skills, intelligence exercises, navigation, and stuff like that. And this is a bit adaptive. The more you achieve, the more difficult the exercises become. And you always have to train more and more. And therefore, it keeps your mind healthy. This is some of the screenshots of the exercises. They are acoustic exercises. You hear sounds or you see things in the TV. Okay? We also did this in combination at that time. We utilized, you recognize this? It's a Wii Nintendo board that the kids use to play games. So we asked if we can utilize devices like these to make games for the elderly people, okay? And to make exercises for the internet, etc. So we have Bluetooth connections with these devices and the remote controls to the computer and all the gaming, etc. through them. We made the whole list of use of touch screens so that it's easy for them, and this technology that could enable them to balance on this, transform these balance exercises into the code, and also utilize the remote control so that they can do different exercises. And we have a lot of protocols that they can do different physical exercises. We build this with I do this with my PhD students, and we call this Fit for All Physical Gaming Suite. This is some of the game-related exercises. This is the mini golf. Basically, all they have to do is balance on this whiteboard and put the ball in the hole. And here they balance back and forwards. They move the boat and they fish. And here they move left and right the basket and get the apples in the basket and stuff like that. These are some of the exercises. Some other are just trying to do flexibility, endurance, then biking or just walking, etc. I think I can show you the other video. Now you will listen to some Greek as well.
Το Long Lasting Memories, LLM, είναι ένα διεθνές ευρωπαϊκό ερευνητικό έργο που αναπτύχθηκε για τη βελτίωση της νοητικής υγείας των ατόμων τρίτης ηλικίας με τη βοήθεια ειδικής νοητικής και σωματικής εξάσκησης. Το έργο αυτό, που χρηματοδοτήθηκε από την Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση, συντονίστηκε από τον επίκουρο καθηγητή κ. Παναγιώτη Μπαμίδη από το Εργαστήριο Ιατρικής Πληροφορικής του Αριστοτελείου Πανεπιστημίου Θεσσαλονίκης. Στο έργο συμμετείχαν 12 ερευνητικές ομάδες από 6 χώρες: Ελλάδα, Ισπανία, Γερμανία, Κύπρο, Αυστρία, Γαλλία. Στην Ελλάδα εφαρμόστηκε σε 4 κέντρα στην Αθήνα και σε 11 στη Θεσσαλονίκη σε συνεργασία του Αριστοτελείου Πανεπιστημίου Θεσσαλονίκης με το Εθνικό και Καποδιστριακό Πανεπιστήμιο Αθηνών αλλά και τοπικούς φορείς. Το ερευνητικό έργο LLM ολοκληρώθηκε το Μάιο του 2012 και αξιολογήθηκε με άριστα από την Ευρωπαϊκή Επιτροπή.
Στόχος του έργου ήταν η αντιμετώπιση του προβλήματος της ήπιας νοητικής εξασθένησης και της ήπιας άνοιας των ανθρώπων της τρίτης ηλικίας. Το προτινόμενο σύστημα συνδυάζει τις πιο σύγχρονες νοητικές και σωματικές ασκήσεις και αποτελεί μια ολοκληρωμένη λύση για νοητική και σωματική υγεία, παρέχοντας στους ηλικιωμένους μια πιο αυτόνομη ζωή.
Το LLM προτείνει μια ολοκληρωμένη τεχνολογική πλατφόρμα που συνδυάζει την εξάσκηση του εγκεφάλου με την εκγύμναση του σώματος μέσα από αντίστοιχα ειδικά διαμορφωμένα προγράμματα ασκήσεων, Brain Fitness και Fit for All. Με το συνδυασμό νοητικής και σωματικής άσκησης, το LLM παρέχει αποτελεσματική προστασία ενάντια στη νοητική εξασθένηση των ηλικιωμένων ατόμων, είτε φυσιολογικών ηλικιωμένων, είτε ηλικιωμένων με ήπιες διαταραχές μνήμης ή στα πρώτα στάδια της άνοιας. Έτσι, επιδρά βελτιώνοντας ενεργά την ποιότητα ζωής των ηλικιωμένων και παρατείνοντας σημαντικά τον χρόνο που μπορούν να παραμείνουν ανεξάρτητοι στο σπίτι. Τα ευρήματα από τα επιστημονικά αποτελέσματα του έργου στη βελτίωση της νοητικής κατάστασης, καθώς και από ερωτηματολόγια ποιότητας ζωής και ικανοποίησης από τα άτομα που υποβλήθηκαν στην εξάσκηση με το LLM, μας έδειξαν πως υπήρξε βελτίωση στις νοητικές λειτουργίες. Τα άτομα μετά την εξάσκηση είχαν βελτίωση στη μνήμη και τις εκτελεστικές λειτουργίες. Δηλαδή, όπως φάνηκε στις ειδικές δοκιμασίες ελέγχου, τα άτομα που ασκήθηκαν σωματικά και νοητικά μπορούσαν να συγκρατήσουν περισσότερα στοιχεία στη μνήμη, αλλά και να έχουν ταχύτερη και ορθότερη λήψη αποφάσεων. Αυτές οι βελτιώσεις σχετίζονται με πιο επιτυχή καθημερινή διαβίωση. Υπήρξε βελτίωση της κινητικότητάς τους και της φυσικής τους κατάστασης, καθώς και τόνωση της αυτοπεποίθησής τους και μείωση των αρνητικών συναισθημάτων τους. Τα παραπάνω υποδηλώνουν ότι με τη χρήση του LLM μπορεί να αυξηθούν οι πιθανότητες αυτόνομης και ανεξάρτητης διαβίωσης των ηλικιωμένων σπίτι τους, που είναι και το πιο συχνό αίτημά τους.
Για την αξιολόγηση των αποτελεσμάτων χρησιμοποιήθηκε μεθοδολογία παρόμοια με αυτή που χρησιμοποιείται στις κλινικές δοκιμές φαρμάκων. Οι συμμετέχοντες στο πρόγραμμα, τόσο φυσιολογικοί ηλικιωμένοι όσο και άτομα με ήπια νοητική έκπτωση ή στα πρώτα στάδια της άνοιας, εξετάστηκαν λεπτομερώς από νευρολόγο και νευροψυχολόγο με την χορήγηση ειδικών δοκιμασιών εκτίμησης των νοητικών λειτουργιών. Οι επιδόσεις σε αυτές τις δοκιμασίες πριν και μετά την παρέμβαση συγκρίθηκαν μεταξύ τους με ειδικές στατιστικές μεθόδους. Τέλος, ορισμένα άτομα εξετάστηκαν με εγκεφαλογράφημα με σκοπό την απόκτηση ενός επιπλέον δείκτη μεταβολής της εγκεφαλικής λειτουργίας.
Το LLM σχεδιάστηκε για να βελτιώσει τη ζωή των ηλικιωμένων ατόμων. Θέλαμε και το καταφέραμε να βελτιώσουμε την υγεία όλων των συμμετεχόντων.
So you can see these developments with all the tools that I mentioned, the Nintendo board, etc. This is one of the presentations that we had in 2011, just when we were doing all these trials with the elderly people. Basically, we test the elderly people. They come and play these games for the mind and the body for 2 months. And we test them before and after with different tests. Psychologists give us tests. Okay, how much you remember, how flexible you are, what do you do every day, etc. Sports science are giving us other things. How strong you are, how much you walk, how fast you are, etc. And we test them before and after. And these graphs that we show is the differences. People that are doing the program are doing better than people that are doing something else or nothing. Okay, so in 2 months' time, we can manage to invert this decline. They go down and down and down, and we stop it. And we start increasing it slowly. Okay, this is what we achieved. But now technology is changing. What technology is changing? You can see, and you have already experienced one of them. Why use a Nintendo board with a remote control and the balance and no camera, no microphone, etc.? What Microsoft is introducing this Kinect thing. And we have sort of estimated that things are going into that direction. There is also new biosensors, different multi-sensory devices, smartphones, smartwatches, etc. New web trends, new programming languages in the web, like HTML with JavaScript combined, etc., HTML5. So we wanted to include all these possibilities, and we changed the programs. And we made the program changes so that other people can also do these exercises. You can see this is our model senior person. He's always visiting us and he's testing these technologies with us. So let me show you what he has been doing with us. This is some of the new interfaces now of the different games. We wanted to do this to play on smart devices like smart TV or tablets or mobile phones. So we asked him to come and test it for us. This is a smart TV interface now. that I showed you before by combining now different devices. You can use the Kinect, and you can also use the Wii central board or whatever. And he's playing it on TV. Now he's combining the Wii Nintendo board as well. This is the mini golf that I showed earlier. And this is lab testing. We invited him to come to our lab, all mess around, as you can see, all buildings, etc. This is the Nintendo board. And now, better. Physical exercise linked with Google Maps. So he just marks where he is, and he moves along different places. He can turn around into different building blocks, walk around where he wants to go, etc. Suddenly he realizes he's in Paris. He's been to Paris before, so that makes him happy. As soon as he realizes that there are people over there, he will see him shouting in French. Bonjour, monsieur. Okay? So it's something that we didn't plan. It happened during these lab recordings. And this is the Museum of Hadropolis in Athens that we could also hear. The same thing in tablet. This is integrated technology now. You can play the same things, either PC, smart TV, tablet, with this sensor or the Kinect sensor. This is more difficult when it's balance exercise, of course, or the smartwatch, the smart telephone. Right. During this project, we were asked to do these things in the houses of people that live alone. So we asked John, our senior person, to come and test the technologies in the lab. So he tested the technology, we were happy. So my students told me, okay, it works, let's go to the homes. Okay, which homes are you going to go? I don't know, the psychologists will find homes for us. But if you were in his place, or not exactly this guy, because this would say yes, this old person, but another guy, and they called you and they said, would you like people from the university to come and install technology in your houses? Obviously no would be the first choice. And even if you said yes, then you would ask your son or your daughter, you say, well, you know, people from the university called me and told me that they are going to come into my house, install all this equipment. Mom, did you say yes? He said, I say yes. You stupid person. Okay? So what do? Nobody will say yes. And this is where we thought we might give it a different goal, actually. So lab settings, before you go into households, I thought of this. Back in 2005, 2006, when I was starting my career as a professor at the university, there was this notion of living labs. Labs for living, for the life. Nobody knew what living labs were back in 2005, 2006. I was reading and not understanding it. And then I remembered, in 2012, 2013, I remembered that there is a possibility of doing living labs, but now we know what we want to do. So we made a house in our lab and asked people to come and live there. Not every day, but perhaps for the whole day, but perhaps 2 hours every day. So if they called me and said, okay, John, would you like to come for 2 hours into our lab? All you have to do is just wander around, prepare some breakfast, make some phone calls, play some games in the TV, you know, we will ask you some questions, we'll pay for your taxi, and you go back home. So we did it. So we established what we say here, active and healthy aging, e-home or living lab. looked, now it looks like this, basically it looked different before. So we managed to have 15 senior people coming and playing with these technologies for 1 or 2 hours every day. Looks like a house. You can see the kitchen here, but it's not. It's printout in the wall. Looks like a bookcase, but it's not. It's a printout. This is a tablet though, you see. But it looks like a nice space. I can do the physical exercise now. In the TV, in the smart TV. They can pause and we monitor how they speak. How do they call? Who do they speak to? The information of their voice, if they are happy or unhappy. How they navigate in the smart TV. And there is also blood pressure. They want a smartwatch that monitors them where they go, what the heart rate is, etc. And they do the exercises like before. With this, they can navigate in the smart TV, and they can use the tablet to play other exercises. Prepare a lunch or breakfast, eat, and we monitor if they do the lunch, if they do the coffee, or whatever. They daily activities, basically. Once you do that, you ask them, would you like the same thing to be applied into your homes? Then it's likely that they will say yes. We didn't do anything terrible. We just came here for 10 days. We have spent already 20 hours in this lab. The same thing can happen to our homes. If we have a problem, we will accept this technology into our homes. So this is what we did. We went into the homes and made the same things. We installed the smart TV, and everything below the smart TV is always established. The Kinect is there, and she's doing these exercises on her own now. Why do I call it ecologically valid? This is something that is perhaps new to you. Ecologically valid means that you don't disturb the everyday actions of the people. If we ask them to go into the hospital and do these things in the hospital, they already think, oh, I have to go to the hospital, I have to go to the doctor. But if you are just telling them, stay where you are, you don't need to do anything. You just watch TV, play whatever you want to do your daily activities, we will find out if you are diseased or not. You do it with an ecologically valid way. It means all you measure is valid because you don't get the person out of the environment. This is what I mentioned in my presentation in FIDO, that we try to get the technology for the elderly out of the box and getting them into their houses and doing proper daily living, get on technology basically. So I'll just show you another video of how we made this. It's a European project we had and we finished last year.
In recent years, the problem of aging has been realized as one of the giant problems of our society. Is technology able to assist?
The USPIL project aims to address the gap between technological research advances and the practical needs of elderly people by developing advanced but affordable in-home, unobtrusive monitoring and web communication solutions. USPIL intends to use technology to develop immediately applicable services that will assist the elderly in maintaining their independence and daily activity. Installation will not require retrofitting in a personal residence and will be almost invisible once installed. Technology implementation will be based on users' acceptance and an understanding of user interactions that will truly address user needs.
The overarching objectives of the trials were fourfold. First of all, to evaluate the subjective impact of the useful system on the quality of life and the feelings of independence and security of target users. The second objective was to evaluate any indicators of well-being and sustained quality of life. The third objective was to validate the technologies developed in usability and whether these were able to detect and alert symptoms of depression, declination of activities of daily living, and perhaps some notions of cognitive decline. The final objective was to evaluate the acceptance and satisfaction amongst all stakeholders of the useful system, the elderly and the caregivers, be they informal or healthcare professionals.
In our pre-trials, we took 15 participants who were coming here at the lab in order to follow the structured scenario.
Primary findings: the active and healthy aging living lab, the pilots, concern usability, technology acceptance by end users, feasibility of measuring health-related indicators such as depressive symptoms, functional limitations, and cognitive decline. In example, an approach towards assessment of clinical impact. Secondary but equally important outcome of the active and healthy aging living lab pilots is a collection of data sets which reflect seniors' interaction with the living space similar to their homes.
5 participants from the initial group agreed to take part in the trials at home. Specifically, we installed the useful equipment in their homes. The neuropsychologists were visiting the 5 participants 2 or 3 times per week in order to discuss with them about their experience at using, to educate them regarding the equipment, generally solve possible problems. After the trials, we organized focus groups, including the 5 participants.
Use the pilot at home focused on the potential of using the technology developed within the project in real-life settings and provide evidence regarding its efficacy as a daily assistive tool for the elderly. Useful conclusions are provided with respect to the way seniors accept useful technology when used in their own private space instead of the lab.
So this is the infrastructure that we have now. We combine the living lab now is expanded actually. We have it in the lab. We have it in an elderly care center outside the university. We have copied that. And we also have the homes. The equipment we installed last year in the homes, it's already there and it's being used now for 15 months. So for 15 months, we record people at their own homes. And we monitor them, how they do every day, etc. This is a huge data set, a huge file, etc. What do you do also to, what do you need to maintain this action? You need to educate people. You need to educate people so that they know what happens in the elderly care. So we had another European project which was called Discover. And for this we wanted to do empowering of skills of people that take care of the other individuals. Like if you have a daughter or a son, they don't know about this declination, about the problems in the senior ages, in the old ages, they can educate themselves by doing some of the examples. So I'll just show you one more video of this with a scenario, basically.
Το Αριστοτέλειο Πανεπιστήμιο Θεσσαλονίκης, σε συνεργασία και με άλλους ευρωπαϊκούς φορείς, ανέπτυξε το πρόγραμμα Discover for Carers. Το πρόγραμμα αυτό ήρθε να δώσει καινοτόμες λύσεις σε χρόνια προβλήματα στον χώρο της φροντίδας της υγείας και της ενίσχυσης των περιθαλπώντων των ασθενών. Με το Discover for Carers, οι περιθάλποντες μπορούν να αναζητούν και να βρίσκουν κέρυες πληροφορίες στο διαδίκτυο, αλλά και να επικοινωνούν και να ανταλλάσσουν εμπειρίες με άλλους περιθάλποντες. Επιπλέον, μπορούν να ενισχύσουν τις δεξιότητές τους μέσα από εικονικά σενάρια προσομοίωσης καθημερινών καταστάσεων. Διαδικτυακά παιχνίδια προσομοίωσης προσφέρουν τη δυνατότητα αλληλεπίδρασης μέσα από καθορισμένα σενάρια. Τέλος, οι χρήστες μπορούν να δημιουργούν προφίλ, τα οποία θα τους βοηθήσουν στην αναζήτηση της όποιας σχετικής εργασίας.
Το Discover for Cares ήρθε να δώσει λύσεις σε μια σειρά από προβλήματα που με τα χρόνια αντιμετώπισαν οι περιθάλποντες. Εδώ βλέπουμε μια τυπική μέρα της κυρίας Μαρίας που εμφανίζει συμπτώματα άνοιας και την οποία επισκέπτεται η κόρη της, Κατερίνα, κάθε τόσο.
Αλλά την Παρασκευή, το μεσημέρι και το απόγευμα, αυτές οι μπόρες στην ουσία με κάποια λίγα αστραπόβροντα θα σημειωθούν κυρίως στο ορεινό.
Η κυρία Μαρία αναζητά το φαρμακό της πίεσης. Ψάχνει παντού.
Αλλά και στις ορεινότερες περιοχές εδώ στην Αραχοκοκαλιά της Πίνγκου, στην υπόλοιπη υπηρετική χώρα θα...
Δεν το βρίσκει πουθενά.
Τίποτα το ιδιαίτερο και στην Κρήτη δήλωση υπάρχει το ενδεχόμενο να βρέξει τοπικά.
Η Κατερίνα αντιλαμβάνεται μια αναστάτωση και την ακούει απογοητευμένη. Καταλαβαίνει τι έψαχνε, καθώς το φάρμακο ήταν στο κομμωδίνο που καθάριζε.
Λίγες τοπικές συννεφιές θα επιμένουν στην βορειοδυτική, κυρίως σημερινή ορεινή Ελλάδα. Πάμε να ρίξουμε μια ματιά στους ανέμους, οι οποίοι θα πλέον βόρειο-βορειοδυτική.
Αργότερα η κυρία Μαρία, πηγαίνοντας προς την κουζίνα για να μαγειρέψει, σκοντάφτει στο χαλί. Έπειτα, καθώς μαγειρεύει, η Κατερίνα παρατηρεί ότι η μητέρα της πάει να ρίξει για τρίτη φορά αλάτι. Της το παίρνει βία από τα χέρια, κάνοντας τη μητέρα της να νιώσει άσχημα για το λάθος της. Η Κατερίνα, μετά την εκπαίδευσή της, φτιάχνει ένα φαρμακείο για τη μητέρα της, στο οποίο η κυρία Μαρία μπορεί να βρει όποιο φάρμακο έχει ανάγκη. Ακόμη, μέσω εικονικών σεναρίων, μαθαίνει να προλαμβάνει πτώσεις όπως αυτές από ένα χαλί. Αλλά και γνωρίζει πως με αδικριτικότητα θα αποτρέψει κάποιο λάθος της μητέρας της. Πλέον με το Discover for Cares ανεδεικνύονται τρόποι επίλυσης των προβλημάτων που μπορεί να αντιμετωπίσουν καθημερινά οι περιθάλποντες.
Μπορούμε πλέον να αντιμετωπίσουμε τα προβλήματα που χρόνια τώρα συναντούσαν οι περιθάλποντες, επαγγελματίες και μη. Το Discover ήρθε και θα συνεχίσει να δίνει κοινωνικά καινοτόμες λύσεις εκεί που οι άνθρωποι το έχουν ανάγκη.
So this is basically training the people with scenarios rather than just lectures and just notes, etc. Scenario-based learning and problem-based learning, basically, so that we can have experiential learning as it's called. How much time do I have? So I can skip through quickly mHealth, which is another category. You have seen some of the mHealth extensions here. mHealth stands for empowering the citizens on the move, basically, using mobile devices and smartphones that we have just seen already. And there is a need for that because there is a lot of such devices already available in the market, and there is a huge market, a huge potential for all these to be developed further and expand. Monitor health, monitor daily living activities, monitor lifestyle, and do something about this lifestyle as well. And there is also the need for early diagnosis, as I said, and I'll show you with examples. The need to take full sustainability of all these solutions. There is a huge trend, a lot of devices, a lot of current developments in the industry, a lot of needs in the market, and mobile health is therefore evolving. A lot of people are placing lots of money and also emphasis on mobiles and the health through the mobiles. In the past, because this is not a new story, in the past there was no infrastructure, there were no good devices. Yes, I'll show you some examples. There were mobile phones since 90s, but not good use of them. Look at that. This is one of the first things that we developed in my old lab. The screen from a Nokia phone. Okay? Some of you might not have seen it. Welcome, log in, etc., etc. You just type. You mistype all from the beginning, and all from the beginning, and all these things, backwards and forwards. To do what? Just put one value for your blood pressure or whatever. And this is another one. It's with personal digital assistants, it used to be called 15 years ago, PDAs. Okay? And we have developed similar services like personalized health education for patients, etc. You know, basically questions and answers with a stylus, yes or no, not touch screen per se with the finger, but with a stylus. Of course, now there is a lot of vertical apps and a lot of them are already in the markets. Google, Apple, BlackBerry, Nokia, whatever it's called, Windows 7 marketplaces. You can find reviews, you can find a number of things and notions of open health, etc. There are even apps that monitor your emotions. Why is that important? We mentioned geriatric depression. A lot of old people feel bad. They're very sad. They're not very well. So it's important that we monitor them. That's why a huge number of people around the world are doing detection of emotion from text, from audio, from face expressions, from body gesture, etc., from other physiological changes to find out whether somebody is happy or not. And there is a lot of biosignals that you can measure as biomedical engineers. You can record brain activities, you can record acoustics and the voice, heart rate, the muscle tension, temperature, the skin conduction, the conduction of the electric power, basically, electric currents, the blood volume from a pulse, respiration rate, how much you breathe, etc. All this you can measure with different sensors. Efforts from the beginning to do with a bracelet, a watch that you wear, and plug it into your PC to find out whether you are happy or not. This is called affective IQ sensor. It's not there anymore, it's an accelerated product. But there were a lot of products like this in the past. This is 10 years old now, HealthPub. Monitor these with the phone, send them into your workstation, etc. Old phones, old watches, sorry, smart watches. You can even use them through Facebook, etc., populate your blood records, monitor you every day you want to go. And these are some of the more challenging ones. You use your phone, and you have your assistant in there. And if you are depressed, the avatar can talk to you. And they can understand why you are so depressed. Like you have a doctor all the time with you. And they can ask you questions. And your voice and your movements, which are vital signals, biosignals basically, which you send through your phone to your doctor, who is the avatar here. But essentially the doctor can look at it. And they can monitor you. And therefore, they can treat your depression at some point with a number of other interventions. In the trials that we have seen in the houses, in the house that we record right now, the people have got the tablets, and they have got this application, which we call it put your emotion down, or whatever it's called. So they have this face, and they can scroll with their finger in the tablet, and they can make this face happy or unhappy. And they can just say at a specific moment how they feel. We have this idea of monitoring self-reported emotions, as we call it. The elderly person just grabs the tablet, puts the finger down, and this is marked into the database now, where we can see for 1 year how this person kept feeling. So what do you do with this data? Remember the videos that I showed you? We have 3 kinds of signals here. Signals from the tablet, they put the finger and they say how much they feel. the signals from the detectors, the sensors, how fast they walk, how much they speak, their faces, whether they are like this or like that. And the psychologists, that they visit them every 2-3 weeks and ask them with specific psychological tests, how many times a day do you do this? Did you go shopping last week? How much did you eat? Did you talk to the phone? And then they get from all these questions scores of depression, scores of anxiety, scores of daily living, of improved living, etc. So we have 3 sets of data: self-reported, sensors, and psychologists. Can we put all these 3 data and make a common result? Say something is wrong about this person. If we can, then our technology, as I said, technology in the wild, because it's in the, not in the lab, but it's the proper space where people live, can do something for them. And we have managed to show that there is a good overlap between these, a few of these situations. So all these now, when it comes to the point of research is good, research is very good, but what do you do next? Can they apply to society? Can they do something useful? And this is something that I had in my mind when we had all this research ongoing. At the end of the project, what do you do? Stop funding, stop the project, put it on the shelf. That's it. Do your publications. All your PhD students will go away. Just fire people after the end of the project. No. You just try to build a service that you can sell. If people are selling the service that they build, they will not go away. So all the people that you saw in the videos and the list of the names in the videos are still with us, most of them. Because we sell this. We sell this in a number of places around Greece because we want to go around the other countries. Of course, there is possibilities if somebody wants to translate, get them, we can resell them, co-market in other countries. And this is a product now already from the university, getting money from the services we sell as commercial products of the research projects. Okay? The idea is to build an ecosystem of open elderly care, as we say, so that we can do the open and silver economy. And this is basically around the future. We can collect data from all over the world. This is the future of Affectiva, for example. They sell the sensor about the mood, and everybody collects data about their mood and puts them, it's like Google. You're using Google, Google collects all your data, and they have a powerful future for them. Okay? The same thing what Affectiva wanted to do from the MIT, etc. I'll skip this. This is a project I mentioned right in the beginning, Parkinson's. We started that last month. This is my colleague, the professor from electrical engineering, and that's the undergraduate students like you. They worked on this application. The project is called iPrognosis for Parkinson's disease. And they made an application. This is the Facebook page, iPrognosis. You can follow that. There are 6.3 million patients around the world for Parkinson's. And there are a number of other millions in danger. There is no biomarker, something that can say, this guy is possible to develop Parkinson. There is no such thing yet. Can technology do it? Can we do it in some way so that we can have enough, early enough detection of Parkinson's so that assist these people? Because the doctors, when the onset, the clinical onset is happening, the symptoms are obvious. The doctors cannot do anything. In the previous time, 20 years, 10 years, 3 years ago, there are prodromic symptoms. They don't sleep very well, they have some depression, some tremors, some disorders. Can they signal anything? Can we get into the point so that we can say at least 1 year before the onset of the symptoms, we can say something about that? Can we? Can technology do that for us? This is the whole essence of this project. How we want to go about it? The concept is basically to have the people talking over their phones or the smartwatches if they have something, and we collect how they speak. Basically, they donate their voices to us. And then we plan to process all these huge amount of voices. Some of them, most of them, will be completely irrelevant to Parkinson's. If we have 10,000 people, only 100 of them will be Parkinsonians. So 10,000 people process the data, they speak over the phone, to have some comparison of these 100 people with proper Parkinsonian patients. And then in the seventh phase, we will do proper monitoring of them. We'll tell them, would you mind joining our trial? The doctors will monitor you. And then we'll do proper monitoring. If this takes place with the Internet of Things technology and stuff like that, if this is analyzed further and the doctor says, okay, there must be something done about them, we do interventions. We do interventions and monitoring different gainings, balance gainings, flexibilities, and all the technology that I showed here, to change this in advance, before the symptoms are there. If we can manage to do that, as my friend says, we might get a Nobel Prize, because it's a very severe problem. Okay, that's a proof of concept basically. We want to show that this is possible to be done, even with this small set of data. And we're going to get, again, the living lab, organized in such a way that we can facilitate, do something here, you can do it in your home as well, etc. What other things are doing in this living lab that I mentioned? This is the living lab that we have at the moment. The Kinect is here and monitors now every day who walks there. This is patterns of walking. People are just entering this space and they walk. And then we can see where they stand. Basically, my students are using it as a kitchen as well. So they go here and they prepare their coffees. And you can see there is a big blob here from the coffee space. Imagine you can do this in a house. You could see where people go without, getting the video, just, the trace of where they go. And we can monitor that. And we can see the patterns and analyze them. Now we want to study these patterns for the Parkinsonians as well. See how incapable they are sometimes, or how unstable, etc. It's a long story and a long research behind that. And I'll just skip us to get some time. We want these living labs to become an initiative like in France and other places, where we have different stakeholders getting into us, ordering some experiments, and getting back the results. So we have made an application for a new project hopefully to be funded, which will have a network of these living labs around Europe and beyond Europe, that we will do studies, analyze the experiments together, co-create experiments, co-analyze experiments together, basically, so that we can have more powerful results and assist the people in a better way. The target is to go out of the lab settings, using the living lab settings and the household that we have, and do large-scale pilots and trials in thousands of houses and thousands of homes with thousands of individuals, basically, with technology, so that we can then create evidence. So this is our vision. We have an aging society, and we do what we call silver science. We create economy, basically, and we want to create economy. We have ideas, we design systems, we deploy trials, and then from all this we try to provide evidence, scientific evidence. If this evidence is good enough, it can be exploitable, it can create maturity. So basically we want the problems of the aging society to be empowered by the silver science, and then this evidence that we provide to create enough maturity so that you can exploit in a number of different ways. Commercial ways now that can give you money back, basically, and can start business, startups, things for you, basically, because all this live streaming is what you will experience as students during your studies. You will have the ideas, you will design systems, you will deploy systems and test them with proper users to provide scientific evidence, and then to do business, basically, because the money has to come from somewhere. If it's just research for research, nobody's going to believe you, nobody's going to fund you in a few years, especially if you have crises like in my country. Okay? So this is our dream. We started with a few centers around, and now we have a whole network of collaborators in Greece. The idea is to organize basically the vision, an ecosystem of open elderly care centers with open and silver economy, etc. And with this view of Thessaloniki, as I was telling my friend Estefani yesterday, we organize a conference next year, computer-based medical systems. It's going to take place in Thessaloniki, and some of you, if you are involved in projects, you are welcome to come. We'll do arrangements for you that you visit Thessaloniki, like I visited Concepcion today. Thank you very much. Feel free to ask anything you want.
Okay, hi, I'm Claudio. I would like to know if this mental training you do with elderly people, have you tried this in elderly with degenerative disease like Alzheimer's?
Yeah, it's most of the people have got problems with dementia, as I said. But if it's very late stage of Alzheimer's, they cannot do it because they cannot follow the instructions.
But does it give good results? The patients show?
Especially if the patient's MCI, as we call, mild cognitive impairment, the first stadium before mild dementia and before Alzheimer's. So if they have this initial stage, it's very nice, the progress that they do. If it's mild dementia, it's also nice, they improve. But if it's dementia onset already and they have Alzheimer's, they cannot understand the instructions, they cannot cooperate to do the program.
And another question, all this data that you get from the patient that you are seeing, does it serve a purpose to prevent something that may happen to them? Like you said, a patient having a stroke.
Yeah.
I don't know. So
that's the whole.
Does it give like a prevention focus?
All the focus that you have seen is prevention. If you have, it doesn't matter if you are healthy or you already have problems with memory and you have some dementia, declination of memory, declination of mental and cognitive status. If you play these, you will get improved. So they prevent the onset of Alzheimer's, the onset of dementia. I don't know if they get it completely out of their way, but they delay the onset. In Parkinson's, we try to do the same. And in monitoring the houses, we also want to early diagnose depression. If the people are too late in their depression, it might be too late. It's not treated anymore. They're completely unhappy. We measure this before they have a lapses of depression. We can do something about them. So it's preventative in a way. Early diagnosis always goes with prevention and proper intervention to treat, basically. And the treatment, all the treatments here are non-pharmacological treatments, technology-oriented treatments, technologies like you will develop.
Thank you.
My name is Javier. Have you tried or go monitoring outdoor activities? Because especially if you're treating diseases like depression, I think that outdoor activities maybe could be better for people.
Yeah.
Or people with lack of movement, I don't know.
Yeah. We don't have the data that I showed and all the video that I showed is for indoors, either at the home or at the living lab, or at municipal centers, centers that people are going, like, let's say, in the church, or in the municipality center, or in some healthcare center. They visit there. It's all indoor activities. Outdoor activities are more difficult to design, and we have started the collaboration with another group to design basically game-based activities in the city. But we haven't done any trials yet. But it's very nice, because then you look into social aspects as well. And in here I haven't talked much about social aspects. There is some indication about social aspects, but you want to be able to monitor everything they do, basically. It's just a matter of connectivity.
Thank you.
¿Existen hoy día tecnologías fiables para medir las funciones del cerebro? Y si es así o no es así, ¿tienen una oportunidad los ingenieros biomédicos en esta área como para empezar a poder indagar?
There are any viable ways to measure
las funciones del cerebro?
Brain function, and so what can biomedical engineers do about it?
Excuse me to put a couple of slides to show brain function. In some of the measurements we did, we asked people to come into the lab and we measured the electroencephalogram. We put electrodes on the head and we monitor nothing, basically, as they stand. Stand there for 5 minutes, do nothing. Open your eyes, close your eyes. 5 minutes eyes open, 5 minutes eyes closed. This, the function of the brain. So we have data before and after these measurements. Before training and after training. We say they improve. Does the brain change? Because we mentioned brain plasticity, that the brain can innovate, etc. Does it work? This is one of the recent results we published. If you take people that have used the program, and we measure them before and after, and you take other people that haven't used the program, and you measure them before and after, do you see any difference? Which brain function, which brain structure is involved in the first group, and it's different from the second group? And we find, if you take the MRI, the tomographic appearance of the anatomy, this is the functional bits that is changing with the training. I call this denoising. I mentioned in one of my slides that when you get older, you start declining. What do? We hear less. What did you say? Repeat it. We see less. I wear glasses. I didn't wear glasses 5 years ago. Don't take out your glasses. You are still young. And we understand less, and we are not very sort of flexible, etc. They say the older you get, the more, idiopathic you become. So all this creates noise. The brain is noisy. So some of the exercises from the cognitive training fight against that. They try to do what we say in neuroscience. My PhD is in neuroscience, so that's why I talk these terms. They try to do sensorial empowerment, sensorial intonation. So the exercises say, te and te. Which one did I say? With T or with P? Be and de. With B or D? Which one did I say? In the beginning, the old people do not recognize this, even they wear all these headsets. and they click anything. And then they become trained. They can distinguish between the two sound-alike sounds. Te and te. They can distinguish. Okay? So when you shout to them, you say, Dad, Dad will listen to the word Dad and not Mom. Okay? So this is, empowering the sound control of your brain. And then you do other exercises, like you observe things, you attend, you make your attention happen. So you do your vision and your memory, and you train that. You train that to become better. So there are different ways that we train as well. So the senses, we listen better, we hear better, we see better, we understand better, we observe better, get a little bit improved. This makes a difference. And we monitor that. This is evidence that I mentioned. This is now, when you do all these things, we create games, we do the trials. What is behind that? We ask the question, does the brain get improved? Yes, it does. This is denoising of the regions. And since you ask, we also monitor the networks of the brain. You take people, how the different regions connect to each other. When people train, before and after. So you take people that trained, before and after training, and you see there is some difference before and after in the networks. How the different regions of the brain connect to each other. You take people that did nothing. You subtract the measurements before from the measurements after. After minus before, 0 difference. So there is no reorganization of the brain. And we can monitor this. What happens in the healthy people? Well, they have a lot of hubs in their brain. A few hubs back in the back of the brain and a few in the front. The people that start forgetting and they are already amnestic, mild cognitive impairment patients that before Alzheimer's, they start losing some of these hubs. And if they get mild dementia, the first stage of Alzheimer's, they get to lose some further. So there is no connection between these areas anymore. It's like breaking the communication lines. The anatomy is there, but it's not connected. It's like not paying a bill. Vodafone cuts the communication links. You have the phone, the lines are already there, but you cannot communicate. Okay? I don't think I have another useful slide for that.
I wanted to ask something. What's the response of the, how many people want to have the system in their home? What's the percent?
I cannot answer this question in a very sort of percentage of the people. It's difficult. We made different, the project that I mentioned was 3.5 years long. In the first 6 months, we had some focus groups. We asked the people, we made interviews. We went into the houses of people, candidates, and we asked them, okay, this is a system, we'll put some camera here, but the camera will not record video, No, it will record video, And some of the ladies, even the one that has got this installed in her house, is one of the 5. She doesn't go in front of the TV to undress because she thinks we might collect video. Okay? We don't. It's just skeleton. Okay? But she thinks we lie. So there is always this skepticism that people are not afraid only of the technology, but they are afraid of the complication of this technology, social complications, etc., without necessarily being improved. What we found is that if they know that they have a problem, they are more inclined to use the technology. So if they say, I have increased possibility to get dementia or stroke or to be robbed because there are thieves coming, and we say, well, even if thieves are coming, we have a watching thing there and we'll call the police and say, yes, install it. So they identify the risk then, and they are happy to get this technology installed in their houses. But generally speaking, people will have to see the benefit first. When we, back in 2011, when I had this program, The Long-Lasting Memories, I called my parents. So I said that we want you to use this computer and play these games for me, etc., etc. And my father, who lived at those days, laughed at me and said, go away. I haven't touched the computer in my life. Now you're asking me to play for every day for 2 months? There's no way. Then I said, Father, then you don't mind me asking for some money. So what money? So, because the European Commission will come and ask for my money, for the money back, if you don't do it. I said, okay, then I do it. So he then got trained and he could do it. So my father, who had never used technology before, at the age of 82, he did it. Just being educated for a few days. So technology should be easy for them to play with. And he got improved. I was impressed because sometimes just sitting in your office, coordinate all these things, and you don't know the essence unless you participate. And there was a test that we were doing before and after. It was called language test. Like if people are improved with their language skills, not if they speak English, but if they speak Greek, proper Greek. If they speak English, proper English. And I always thought, okay, this is a psychology joke. What the hell are you going to find out? How better the people speak now, and if they train, they speak, better? What's the point? And I saw it in my father. I was calling him before, for a number of years, and the first thing he would tell me is that your mother is not at home. Do you want anything from me? So he didn't want to talk much. When he was doing this program, he was asking me questions. Like, what did you do today? Where did you go? Where are you flying? Where are you traveling? And stuff like that. And I realized, this psychology test we call language test is a reality. It works. They found that he was improved in language skills, and he is already improved in language skills. He talks more. So it's real life situations. But they have to get a point, like a handle. If they know that the technology will improve them, they will use the technology. If they don't, they will not use it. But at the same time, the generations change. Our generation will know that we'll have to get used to the technology, the changing technology all the time, because there is no point without any technology. And the new generation will be stuck with technology all throughout the years. I mean, we never had any mobile phones when we did the lectures. You don't go to your lectures without your mobile phones, I guess. Okay? And it's like that.
Hello. My question is this device already available in the market? Or what kind of people can get this service?
The service that we have has got different things, basically. The service we sell as university, it has two software units. One is doing the cognitive training, and the other is doing the physical training. The cognitive training, all you need is just a computer or a tablet or something, and the license. So they buy the license for a year, and they just use it wherever they want. For the physical one, they will need to call us. They buy a Kinect, as well as they have to get a PC, and we install it. And they have to train them, we have to train them to do it. Or we have to link them with a sports expert or a personal trainer, as we say, that they visit at a time and they do this for them. So this is what the whole notion the people. We do training sessions, education sessions, where we ask people to come train as professionals so that they know what to do with the elderly people. Or we ask relatives to come and find out how they can do this for their parents, and then just they pay the software basically. So it's not a specific device. We don't have a specific device, but we have the software that we sell. The cognitive one is in all languages, and it's sold. You can even use it in Spanish. It's translated. You can get it from brainhq.com. You can buy it from there. And if you want the physical software, there is partially a Spanish translation that we have for the old system. The new one, it can be ready, say, in 2 weeks if we demand, and you can also use it. If people are interested in doing business in Chile about this, we'll be happy to do it.
Ya bueno, estamos en la hora, ahora tenemos un cóctel ahí para finalizar la clase inaugural de Ingeniería Biomédica. Damos de nuevo el agradecimiento.